What if one of history's greatest legends turned out to be real? For thousands of years, the story of Atlantis has been dismissed as myth, a utopia described by the philosopher Plato, filled with shimmering palaces, golden temples, and towers that touched the sky before it vanished beneath the sea in a single terrible night. But what if it wasn't just a story? What if, beneath the waves off the coast of Egypt, an ancient city lost for over 1,000 years had been waiting to rise again, not in legend, but in stone? This is the story of Heracleion, a city once thought to be pure myth, until divers found its ruins hidden under mud and seaweed perfectly preserved by time. A city of forgotten gods, sunken statues, and mysteries that still baffle scientists today. Some believe it was a trade capital. Others say it was Egypt's gateway to the Greek world. But a few whisper something wilder, that Heracleion could be the inspiration behind the tale of Atlantis. Tonight, we dive below the waves into a world that once glittered with riches and now sleeps beneath the sea. In 2000, a team of underwater archaeologists were scanning the Bay of Abu Qir, just north of Alexandria, Egypt. They weren't expecting to find anything. The seabed there had been studied before, dismissed as empty. But French explorer Frank Gaudiot had a hunch. His team used advanced sonar and magnetic imaging, sweeping slowly across the shallows. And then, something appeared. A pattern too perfect to be natural. Lines, right angles, a shape like a harbor wall. They dove down. What they saw wasn't just stone. It was architecture buried under centuries of sand, silt, and salt water. Columns, carvings, pieces of statues taller than a man, and then a name carved into stone in both Greek and ancient Egyptian. Thonis Heraklion, a name once mentioned by Herodotus, the ancient historian. A city described in passing by travelers and poets, but never seen, never found, never proven to exist. Until now, it had been real all along, and it had been hiding beneath the sea for over 200 years. Divers soon uncovered more massive stone anchors from ancient ships, sphinxes and slabs with hieroglyphs, a perfectly preserved temple dedicated to Amun-Gareb, one of Egypt's most powerful gods. As the sand was cleared away, a picture began to emerge. This wasn't a fishing village. This was a metropolis once filled with light, life, and luxury. A city that had simply vanished. But how and why? That's what we'll explore next, the rise of Heracleion, its connection to the gods, and the moment the sea came to claim it all. Long before Alexandria became the crown jewel of Egypt's Mediterranean coast, there was Heracleion, a city built on the edge of land and sea. No one knows exactly when it was founded. Some scholars believe it dates back to the 12th century BCE. Others argue it rose to power around 600 BCE. But what we do know is that Heracleion was once the most important port in all of Egypt. Ships from Greece, Phoenicia, and the Near East sailed into its harbor. Merchants brought goods, gold, spices, wine, and oil, and left with papyrus, linen, grain, and glass. But Heracleion was more than a trade hub. It was a sacred city. Legend says this was where Heracles, the mighty Greek hero, first set foot on Egyptian soil. The city was named in his honor by the Greeks. To the Egyptians, it was Thonis, home to temples, priests, and rites older than memory. Here, the gods of two worlds met. Egyptian deities like Isis and Amun were worshipped alongside Greek ones like Zeus and Demeter. And at the center of the city stood the great temple of Amun-Gareb, its columns reaching toward the sky, its steps carved with prayers. It was here that the pharaohs came to receive their divine power, their link to the gods confirmed by sacred ceremony. Heracleion wasn't just a city, it was a bridge between heaven and earth, Egypt and Greece, myth and reality. But the city's beauty came with a risk. It was built on the soft, silty edge of the Nile Delta. The very waters that brought prosperity also made its foundations unstable. Still, Heracleion thrived for centuries. Festivals were held on the canals. Markets buzzed with voices in a dozen languages. The harbor glittered with sails. Until one day, it didn't. Because somewhere around the 2nd century BCE, the records go silent. Heracleion disappears. No great battle, no mention of fire or invasion. Just silence, as if the city had been swallowed whole. It wouldn't be until over 1,000 years later in the modern age that scientists began to piece together what truly happened. And the answer, it may explain not only the fall of Heracleion, but also the myth of Atlantis itself. For centuries, Heracleion was forgotten, a name whispered in passing by ancient texts but never believed to be real. Until its rediscovery in the year 2000, archaeologists had no idea how truly advanced and vulnerable the city had been. What they found beneath the sea stunned them. Not just buildings, but entire neighborhoods preserved like a sunken time capsule. Giant statues toppled but intact. Columns, coins, amulets, ceremonial boats, even wooden remains of ancient ships, still resting where they had sunk. But the real question was, why did it vanish? And the answer lay not in war, but in nature itself. Heracleion was built on sedimentary soil, a marshy landscape formed by centuries of Nile deposits. That soil was unstable, resting on a layer of subterranean clay and saturated sand. Now imagine over centuries buildings grow heavier. Wells are dug, temples rise, and slowly deep beneath the surface, water pressure builds. Eventually, the ground reaches a breaking point. Scientists call it liquefaction, when the soil, shaken or saturated, suddenly loses all strength and turns into liquid. And when that happens, whole cities can sink. And that's exactly what happened here. A powerful earthquake may have triggered it. Or a series of smaller tremors, combined with rising sea levels. One day the earth gave way beneath Heracleion. The city didn't burn, it sank. Buildings slid beneath the surface. Streets disappeared in minutes. Temples once towering crumbled into the mud. And just like that, Heracleion was gone. The sea swallowed it, and time buried it. But the story didn't disappear entirely. Because hundreds of years earlier, in 360 BCE, a Greek philosopher had written about a different city. A mighty city. A proud, shining city that had grown too powerful, too arrogant, until the gods struck it down in a single night. Atlantis. And the similarities are impossible to ignore. A wealthy city built near the water. Divine temples. A sudden mysterious collapse. Lost for centuries beneath the sea. Could Plato have heard whispers? Stories passed from merchant to sailor to philosopher about Heracleion. Could Heracleion be the real Atlantis? Or was it simply one of many forgotten cities, swallowed by time, feeding the myth? In the next part, we dive into the heart of the Atlantis legend and why it continues to haunt us even today. The story of Atlantis begins with a man named Plato. Around 360 BCE, Plato wrote two dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, in which a character recalls an ancient tale passed down from the Greek statesman Solon. Solon had traveled to Egypt generations earlier, where priests in the city of Sais told him of a mighty civilization that once existed 9,000 years before. This civilization, the priest said, lay beyond the Pillars of Heracles, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. Atlantis, they claimed, was a powerful island kingdom. Its cities glittered with gold and orichalcum. Its people were skilled in science, philosophy, and engineering. Its navy unmatched. But Atlantis grew greedy, arrogant. Its leaders sought to conquer not just nearby lands, but the entire known world. In response, the gods punished them. And in a single night of earthquakes and floods, Atlantis vanished into the sea. That's the tale, short, poetic, and haunting. And for millennia, it's been dismissed by most scholars as allegory. A warning from Plato about pride, corruption, and the fall of empires. But what if it wasn't fiction? What if Plato's source, those Egyptian priests, were referencing something they had seen or heard? Egypt, after all, is a land of long memory. Its people recorded floods, plagues, celestial events. Could a disaster like the sinking of Heracleion or a similar city have inspired the Egyptian version of Atlantis? Could Heracleion have been the seed of truth, in a tale told and retold until it became legend. What's fascinating is how closely Plato's Atlantis matches descriptions of Heraklion. Both were centers of trade. Both had temples to powerful gods. Both controlled nearby waterways. And both vanished suddenly due to a natural catastrophe involving the sea. And there's more. Plato described Atlantis as having circular canals and concentric harbors. When archaeologists mapped Heraklion, they discovered an elaborate network of canals, docks, and bridges connecting islands and temple districts, not in perfect circles, but close enough to stir debate. Could it be coincidence? Perhaps. But here's the twist: Heraklion wasn't alone. In the eastern Mediterranean, dozens of ancient cities now forgotten lie buried beneath water, sand, and mud, each one a possible thread in the fabric of Atlantis. And one by one they are being found. So the question becomes, was Atlantis one city, or a collection of them? A memory passed between civilizations, reshaped by time, until myth and reality blurred. In the next part, we go deeper into the underwater ruins, where discoveries keep challenging everything we thought we knew. By the early 2000s, Heraklion was no longer just a whisper in dusty scrolls. It had become one of the greatest underwater archaeological sites in human history. Frank Gaudio and his team worked tirelessly, diving day after day into the murky waters of Abukir Bay. What they found didn't just confirm Heraklion's existence, it reshaped our understanding of the ancient world. One of the first major finds was a 7-ton granite statue of the god Hapi, guardian of the Nile's floods. His calm face, arms crossed, lay preserved in silt, like he had merely fallen asleep beneath the waves. Nearby, they uncovered dozens of ships, many still with their cargo on board. These were not warships, but trading vessels carrying amphorae, oil jars, and ceremonial objects. Coins from Greece, Phoenicia, and Persia lay alongside scarabs, hieroglyphs, and inscribed tablets. Even more remarkable were the steely giant stone slabs, etched in 2 or 3 languages, like ancient press releases. One stele, commissioned by Pharaoh Nectanebo, referenced the laws governing Heraklion's temples and harbors. It wasn't just a city. It was a cosmopolitan hub where cultures collided, exchanged, and worshipped side by side. And then, they found something chilling. A massive structure buried deeper than the rest, that some believed to be the foundation of a ceremonial complex. But parts of it were tilted, sunken unevenly, as though the earth had buckled beneath it. Signs of sudden destruction, slabs torn from their bases, walls leaning, stone steps cracked down the middle. To the archaeologists, it was clear. This wasn't a slow decline. Something violent had happened, something sudden. And more than that, the layout of the city, with its networks of water channels, circular precincts, and concentric arrangements, had unsettling echoes of Plato's Atlantis. Even the sacred center, a temple to the god Amun, matched Plato's description of the central shrine to Poseidon in Atlantis. But what intrigued Gaudio's team most wasn't just what was found. It was what was still missing. Many of the city's greatest treasures had likely sunk deeper, buried under layers of sediment, and some may never be recovered. But the message was clear. Heraklion had been real. It had been powerful. It had been lost to the sea. And like Atlantis, it had nearly been erased from human memory. In the next part, we follow the threads from Heraklion to other lost cities and discover that Atlantis might not be just one place, but part of a pattern. Heraklion was just the beginning. As underwater archaeology advanced, more sunken cities began to emerge from the deep, not just in Egypt, but across the Mediterranean and beyond. Take Pavlo Petri, for instance, discovered off the coast of southern Greece in the 1960s. It's over 5,000 years old, making it one of the oldest known underwater cities in the world. Its roads, courtyards, and even 2-story buildings were still visible beneath the sea, preserved like a ghost town frozen in time. Or consider Baiae, the Roman Las Vegas of the ancient world, once a luxurious resort for emperors and generals, now sleeping beneath the waters of the Bay of Naples. Submerged temples, marble columns, mosaics that still shimmer beneath the light, visited now by scuba divers instead of senators. Even further east in India, sonar scans have revealed underwater ruins near Dwarka, long thought to be mythical, tied to tales from the Mahabharata. Each of these places shares something in common. They were built near the sea, they flourished, and then they vanished. Some due to earthquakes, others to tsunamis, rising seas, or even slow erosion over centuries. But the deeper pattern is striking. Across cultures from Greece to Egypt, India, to the Americas, there are stories of great cities swallowed by the ocean. Stories of civilizations that grew too proud, too powerful, and then were washed away. Atlantis isn't just a Greek myth, it's a global memory, a symbol of something humans have always feared, and perhaps deep down remembered. And it's not just ruins we're finding under the sea, it's the echoes of ancient warnings. Because for all our technology, we too build cities on the edge of oceans. We too reach higher and higher. And the sea, it never forgets. In the next part, we'll explore how these underwater discoveries are reshaping science and how modern technology is finally catching up to ancient secrets. In recent years, what was once the work of explorers and divers has become the domain of advanced technology. Today's underwater archaeologists don't just rely on eyesight or luck. They use sonar imaging magnetometers, remote-operated vehicles, ROVs, and 3D mapping to scan the seafloor with unprecedented precision. It's like peeling back the layers of time without ever touching a stone. Take the case of Heraklion. Thanks to side-scan sonar researchers, we're able to map the layout of the entire sunken city, revealing a complex urban network of canals, harbor basins, and temple complexes that had once bustled with life. Sub-bottom profilers then helped identify buried layers of architecture, including roads and walls hidden beneath layers of sediment invisible to the naked eye. And 3D reconstructions brought it all back to life. Now anyone can step into a virtual model of Heraklion, walk its streets, float through its temples, all from a computer screen. But these tools are also being used to find what hasn't been discovered yet. All across the Mediterranean, teams are scanning for anomalies, unusual shapes, straight lines, shadows on the seafloor that hint at forgotten cities. Some discoveries remain classified, awaiting confirmation. Others are whispered in academic circles. But one thing is clear, the ocean is not empty. It is a library, a vault, a time capsule of civilizations we've barely begun to understand. And as sea levels continue to rise, modern cities from Miami to Jakarta now face threats not unlike those that once doomed Heraklion. Suddenly, Plato's warning about Atlantis, a proud city swallowed by water, feels less like legend and more like prophecy. Because it wasn't just a story about the past, it was a mirror held up to the future. In the final part of our journey, we'll return to Atlantis itself and ask, was it ever just one place, or a memory stitched together from many cities? Each lost, each real, and each carrying a message from the deep. So what was Atlantis? A real place, a metaphor, a memory blurred by time and retelling. Perhaps it was all three. What we know is this ancient cities like Heraklion, Pavlopetri, and Baiae were real. They were grand, and they were lost, not to legend, but to water geology and the slow turning of the earth. And perhaps Plato, in writing about Atlantis, wasn't inventing a place. He was preserving one, or many, translating whispers of lost worlds into philosophy. When we talk about Atlantis today, we often picture one perfect island ringed with gold and ruled by gods. But maybe Atlantis wasn't a place. Maybe it was a warning, a reminder that even the greatest civilizations, those who defy nature, who reach too far, can disappear quietly beneath the waves. Today, Heraklion sleeps underwater, its statues lying sideways, its stones wrapped in seaweed. But it also lives again in museums, in virtual reconstructions, and in the minds of those who dare to imagine what the world once looked like. And that's the true gift of stories like Atlantis. They don't just speak of the past. They ask us to listen to memory, to myth, and to the voice of the sea itself. Because somewhere out there in the blue silence, other cities still sleep, waiting to be found, waiting to be remembered, waiting to whisper their stories one dive, one discovery, one dream at a time. If this journey beneath the sea moved, you don't forget to subscribe for more mysteries from history brought to life. Leave a comment below. Do you believe Atlantis was ever real? And which ancient legend should we uncover next? Until then, rest well. And we'll see you in the next video where the past still breathes, just beneath the surface.